Hey everybody, welcome to week 3 of the Music 104 8-week session. I hope that you're all doing well. I hope you had a great weekend. Again, remember I'm recording this on Sunday, so today is Halloween, and if you celebrate it or you do something, hopefully you had a good weekend. So we are going to get ready for new material, lots to cover this week. But I just want to go back. I know I sent this out in my Sunday announcement, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page because I'm still getting some confusion, and I'm not quite sure what's happening because I send out the reminders, I put out these welcome videos, and so just briefly, every week the rhythm is more or less the same. These welcome videos come out at 8 a.m. on Monday mornings. The goal is that you watch them ASAP, as early in the week as you can, because when you need to do this to unlock the next modules. So I'm getting people that are reaching out saying, hey, I can't, it's like Friday, and they're saying, I can't get into these other modules. Yeah, because that's the way that things are set up. I explained this early on, and I'm continuing to. The rhythm is the same. So in a perfect world, you would get to this on Monday or Tuesday. And I know a lot of you are busy, a lot of you are doing a lot of stuff. And so it's important that you carve out a half an hour just to knock at least this part out so that it unlocks your lessons. You can then get through your lessons, and then on Thursday, this assignment is due on Thursdays at noon, okay? And then it locks. It's done. You can't go back to it. Your initial discussion post needs to be done by Thursdays by the end of the day. That just, it doesn't lock. You can still post it late for reduced points. But the point is that if I don't get those initial posts in early, then I run the risk of nobody having anything to reply to. And that's not fair to the class as a whole. So the idea is that I want you to get through your materials. Then you make your initial discussion post on Thursday at some point, or before. You could do your initial post, as soon as you get done with the materials. But the materials inform that. And by the materials, I mean both the textbook and the online materials. So it's really important that you read the prompt or prompts. Sometimes I give you a choice, and that you understand what's being asked of you, and that you read them all and that you answer them all. If you are not sure, please message me in Canvas and say, hey, I'm confused about this. Can you clarify? This is what I think it means. Am I right? Am I wrong? And so it's important that you understand that. Okay, so that's Thursday. Then the next big day is Sundays. Sundays, you have due your quizzes are due. Actually, your quizzes should be all done because you need to get through the quizzes to get to the assignments. And I put them that way on purpose because I want you to be able to get through the quizzes to measure what you've learned in that module in the chapter. That's book and materials. And then you move on. So the main things then is getting that reflection observation done and your discussion replies. For your discussion replies, please make them meaningful, thoughtful, maybe even ask a question, which is another good reason not to wait till the last minute. I don't want you to post, you made a really good point, I totally agree with that, good job. I will not give you any credit for something like that because that doesn't even address that you read the post, you're just sort of doing it. So if you want to earn the points, you have to earn all the points in this. They are not givens. It's not do the discussion, you get all the points. Hopefully you're already seeing that by now. It's not a all or nothing. It's on a scale. So I'm judging the quality of the work that is coming in. And as this class moves on, I judge more strictly because of what I know you're capable of and what I know the materials provide. So then by Thursdays, you have to get that reflection observation in. I really suggest that you, again, spend the time, understand the question. The assignment asks you, part of the assignment is to post the prompt at the top. That does not count for your word count. Okay, so know that. You got to have 250 words. That my words don't count as your words. And then you write it. So make sure that that's in there. And I had somebody reach out to me and said, there were some computer issues, Canvas issues on Saturday for a brief amount of time. It wasn't terribly long, I don't think. But I recommend that you actually write your assignments not directly into Canvas, and that you actually write it in something different. Write it in Word, and some sort of text, whatever. And then you have it ready to go, and then you just copy and paste that all into the assignment. That way, if something weird goes wrong, you have it saved. If it were me, I would actually make an ongoing document of each assignment so that I could I would have that as backup. I did have something, a question for you all. I'll post it here because somebody had mentioned to me recently, not a student, not in this class, but they said, "Oh yeah, some of the students even do these things like speech to text." And so I'm curious if any of you are doing that. So I'm going to put a little are you doing speech to text question right here. And then I'll just say this. If you are doing that, make sure you proofread. I am getting grammar errors, punctuation errors. I am getting all sorts of things. I don't really mark down for that a lot, but it does impact my grading. So it's really important to me that you turn in this is college, right? You're in a college class, so you need to turn in college level work that you're proud of, work that shows that you're learning the materials. Okay, enough of that. I don't want to have to keep going over this, and maybe some of you are going, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's going over this again. That's how I feel too. But we still have issues going on, and so until those all get cleaned up and we're all moving along great, then we're good. I will also say one last thing that I don't know what the count is right now, but the discussion posts, not even half the class had done them by Thursday or even by Friday. So it's really important you stay on the timeline here if you want a good grade in this class and you want to learn the materials. Okay, so moving forward, this week, you've got 2 modules that you've got to work through. So that means you're going to have 2 quizzes, one at the end of each module. You're going to have your discussion. You're going to have your reflection observation, and you're going to have the first of your 3 big tests. So I don't do a midterm final. I do 3 tests. I just find that to be a little more manageable, and it helps you all because then it's not like trying to cram in for these 2. It gets to spread the material out a little bit more. So the materials for this week are chapters 5 and 6. Your test 1 is chapters 1 through 6. So it's going to draw largely from the quizzes, and then there's 2 parts. One part draws from that and some other things, and then the second part is listening. So make sure that you're set up with your Spotify. Even if you have the free account, it's all cool. Make sure that it's up and running when you take this thing, because otherwise it'll only give you little snippets of songs instead of the whole songs. And it'll ask you questions about the songs. It won't ask you name or title, because that shows up in the Spotify link. But it'll ask you something about the song as it relates to the materials that you learned, okay? So that's going on. So be ready for all of that. So really quick, catch us up to date. You learned about Tin Pan Alley, you learned about jazz, you learned about ragtime, you learned about folk, you learned about blues a lot. You've learned about Delta blues, classic blues, country blues, urban blues, as those populations migrated into the cities. You know, the people left the South, particularly the Black communities left the South, and they went to find work in places like Kansas and Chicago and Detroit, and they were able to get out of the South and move. And then you learned about how that morphed into rhythm and blues, which was really a 12-bar blues format combined with dance rhythms. It was really dance-based. And the whole, American popular music has dance rhythms all the way through it, even still to this day. Obviously, you could think about that. And then you learned about spirituals and gospel and doo-wop and country, and then that got us into rock and roll. That got us to Elvis Presley, the big game changer, and you learned about Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Buddy Holly, the Everly Brothers. And then you learned about how at the end of the rock and roll era, rock and roll was really despised by certain factions of society, and it largely shut down. So by the time you get to the end of the 50s, Elvis is drafted, Chuck Berry's in jail, Little Richard gave up his music career to be a preacher, Buddy Holly was killed. And by the way, that's a good question. What is the date of that plane crash? I think that I'll put that right here. And the plane crash that we lost, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper, which was a huge loss. and it really changed the game. So what happens after that is a couple of things. And you're going to notice as we continue to move through this class, you're going to notice this separation in some ways. And we've talked a lot about segregation, and some of the segregation that happened, say in the concerts, like I mentioned before, will break down in the 60s with the civil rights movement. And some of it is just kind of natural byproduct of, bumped my camera, of people, wanting to be where they're comfortable and all of that. But you're going to notice a difference between like black music and white music. And that's going to be an interesting thread that I just want you to be mindful of as we move through the class, because you're definitely going to see genres that tend to lean more towards black artists, black fans, other genres, and then some that blend. So be mindful of that as we work through it, and you think about it in the context. And even when I ask you about, I'll always ask you, or almost always ask you, like, are there modern day blah 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 of this? And I think I mentioned this before. There always are. So really think about those questions. So what happened was you had the development of teen style rock. So the marketers realized, the business people realized, hey, there's money to be made here off of these teenagers that are listening to this new music, this rock and roll, this rhythm and blues, all this sort of stuff that's going on. And so they started marketing heavily in the 50s to these teenagers. And as rock and roll faded, they kept that going. And there was a whole style of music developed called teen style rock with teen idols. And you're going to learn about what a teen idol is and the role of a teen idol societally. And they served a certain purpose, but back behind it, a lot of it was, of course, making money. So you're going to learn about teen idol rock, and you're going to also learn about. I just lost my train of thought there. So you're going to learn about teen idol rock. You're going to learn about the Brill Building, which was a particular place in New York where these amazing singer-songwriters worked. People like Carole King and Jerry Goffin, Lieber and Stoller, Neil Sedaka, and other folks, Shadow Stevens. And they were known for writing these great hit songs. And you're going to learn about the songs that they wrote. And you're going to learn about we learned about the role of a producer with Sam Phillips a little bit, and you're going to learn about Phil Spector, who's got a very checkered past, but was a very significant producer in the 60s, late 50s and 60s, early 60s particularly. And he was adored and loved by many, including the Beatles, because he had a sound. It became known as the Wall of Sound. And that's going to be really important. That Wall of Sound was very significant. Now, to understand the Wall of Sound, I'll just do this quickly, but the music that we listen to, for the most part nowadays, is stereo, and everything that you've grown up has been stereo. And what that means is that if you imagine, I'll kind of do this, there's what we call a stereo field from left to right. And so you can have something come out only on the right, something come out only on the left, or somewhere in between. And you'll know what I'm talking about if you've ever had something with your earbuds or AirPods in, or a speaker wasn't working, and you're like, hey, how come all of a sudden I'm not hearing the vocals, or I'm missing a guitar part, or whatever. That's because the producers are using the stereo field, or the artists are using it. Well, the stereo didn't really become a big thing until the mid-60s. Up until that, all the recorded music was monophonic, which meant monophonic literally means one sound. But what it means is it's the same sound coming out of one speaker. If you had two speakers, it would be the same thing coming out. So Phil Spector had pioneered this technique known as the Wall of Sound, which was influenced by classical composers, particularly Wagner. The way that he could orchestrate a really big group and have it all work. But it really only worked in mono. And when stereo started to take over from mono, then things started to change, and it didn't work out well for him. Some of you may know heard of quadraphonic sound, where you have 4 sound sources, 5.1, if you're familiar to 5.1 or 5.1, and you go to movie theaters, and they deal with this sort of sound stuff all the time. For us, most everything that we listen to is stereo. And then that's going to also lead us into surf rock. Surf rock is instrumental style of music, dance music. The dance music becomes very popular in the teen rock phase, teen idol phase, you have lots of dances like the pony and the mashed potato, and dances become, the really leading into that was the twist. And so you have these songs named after dances. And then on the West Coast, you have this style of music known as surf rock, which actually started, interestingly enough, with the Ventures up in Washington, not really a surf town, state, you know what I mean? But then you end up with the Safaris and the Shantays, and then that leads us into the Beach Boys. And the Beach Boys are hugely significant in the history of rock music. Brian Wilson in particular, I know there's a new documentary coming out about him. And if any of you have seen the movie Love and Mercy, you know a little bit of his story. He had a really kind of challenging time. But he was very influenced by Spector's Wall of Sound. And he was also influenced by the jazz harmonies of the Four Freshmen. And he was able to combine all these energies and this surf idea, the surf motif, and that's how the Beach Boys came together. And then they became a really significant band. And if it weren't for the Beach Boys, the Beatles might have not pushed artistically the way that they did. We haven't gotten yet to learn about the Beatles, but two really profound influences on the Beatles, who, by the way, are the most important rock band ever. And I'm not saying that you have to say they're your favorite. I'm just saying they're the most important one, so we'll get to that. But if it wasn't for the Beach Boys and Bob Dylan, the Beatles probably would not have gone to expanded all the ways that they could have. And so the Beach Boys and the Beatles had a kind of a friendly rivalry. They kept pushing each other. And when you get into, 63, 64, you can actually hear the albums progress until you get to the Beach Boys' masterpiece, Pet Sounds, in 1966. And Pet Sounds influenced Sgt. Pepper's, and it influenced a lot of other people. So you're going to learn all about all of that. So that's all taken down through one thread. And then you're also going to have a chapter on soul and Motown. And it's important to understand that these are happening concurrently, right? These are happening at the same time. So it's easy for us to compartmentalize. And then when we learn sequentially, one chapter after another, we may think that chronologically it happens after it, but it doesn't. If you look at the dates, it's important to see how these all overlap. I used to have a big Excel sheet that showed that. I got to find a way to resurrect that thing. Because it's important to understand that when you're learning about the Beach Boys, the Beach Boys, the Beatles, Motown, that's all the same time. It's all happening. It's a tremendous time of music. So you have out of rock and roll and rhythm and blues kind of stays with us forever. It's still here now, right? But in the 60s, rock and roll kind of goes away, and then what happens is you have soul and you have Motown, and those really are the two predominant black styles of music that go on. They are amazing styles, some of my favorite stuff, but they're very different in and of themselves. Soul music comes from the South. It was really emotional, very much influenced by gospel music, and you have remarkable singers. To me, the two that really typify soul at its best is Otis Redding and Aretha Franklin. And I will tell you that Otis Redding is one of my personal favorite singers of anybody, period. He was just amazing. Amazing artist. And so, when you're listening to, in fact, Otis Redding, if you know the Aretha Franklin song Respect, that actually was written by Otis Redding. And then another, there was down there where they had Booker T and the MGs where they recorded, that was like the house band. So Steve Cropper wrote a lot of those songs. So you'll learn about Booker T and the MGs. And so you're going to be learning about soul music. And then Motown comes from Detroit. Motown is short for Motor City, which is the nickname of Detroit because there are so many automobile factories in there. And Detroit has its own interesting history. You're going to see that coming from Motown. You're going to see that coming from Iggy Pop and the MC5, all the way up through White Stripes. So you're going to see, this interesting types of music come out of there. But Motown was formed by Berry Gordy. And his idea was to basically create a music that was raceless. In other words, because there was still so much race going on, racism happening, that he's like, look, I just want to make songs that people will love. his goal eventually was to make the songs for young America. And he felt that race shouldn't be an issue. You should be able to hear a great song and it just be a great song. It didn't matter what the race of the artist was. And so he would sign these artists. He would have them change their names. He would have them go to finishing school, where they would learn how to, and this comes off kind of racist now, but I didn't do it. Berry Gordy did it. But he would teach them how to dress, how to speak, how to handle themselves, how to rise above the stereotypes, if you will. Now, you can take that how you want to take that, but that's what he was doing. And in the early 60s, and it exploded. It was huge. I think Please Mr. Postman was the first one, but you've got, Smokey Robinson, The Miracles, you got My Girl, you got Diana Ross and the Supremes, you got so many, the Four Tops, so many amazing bands and so many great songs. I shouldn't even say bands. The Motown had its own writers, and Motown had its own house band known as the Funk Brothers. You're going to learn about the Funk Brothers, and they were so they played on pretty much everything that you heard. These phenomenal musicians. And so you're going to learn all about that incredible history, and still to this day, you will hear soul from this era. You will still hear Motown from this era, and it still holds up. It's great stuff. So I want you to be mindful of these things. I want you to also think about, because this is going to show up in one of your things. I've retooled this assignment. One of my assignments that I've given, people stumble on it, so I've reworked it to really focus it on Motown. But I want you to think about the 60s. We have so much happening in the 1960s. We have the assassination of JFK in 1963. We have the assassination of Martin Luther King in 1968, as well as John F. Kennedy's brother, Bobby. We have the Vietnam War is going on during this time, which had such an effect on the era, particularly because of the draft. And it's so many that were dying in a war that nobody really understood. And you've already been learning about that. You have the civil rights movement. You have the women's movement. You have all these things that are happening. And so I want you to think about the music that you're listening to, and think about how it changes as you move from the early 60s into the late 60s, particularly as it comes in contact and it influences the civil rights movement and vice versa. Okay? So think about that, because you're going to need to know about that. So that's it for now. Again, I know these are long videos, but they're usually not as long when in the 16-week class, but we got a lot to cover, and you're already getting that. Hopefully moving forward, I won't have to do all the stuff with filling in again on how this week's work and assignments work. As you know, there have been questions buried in here or will be at the very end here. So make sure that you're answering those. They're all related to the video for the most part, or things that you have learned. So get those points. As long as you're watching this, they're easy points to get. That's it. Have a great week. Welcome to November, everybody. See you soon. Bye.